a moment to continue with our next speaker. Now, detection of adulterations in animal origin flour. This is a critical aspect in the animal and food, especially the impact with the new technologies are developing an essential role in this detection, forwarding efficient tools, effective tools to make sure they have authenticity and safety of our products of this yield, to strengthen the quality control systems and also to promote more transparent and safe industry to everyone. And the next participation, Dr. Juan Ruano will be sharing with us some of the technologies applied to the efficiency industry. He's from Guatemala with a degree in food safety by the Agricultural School of Zamorano, 2025, with a grant by the NIPR Foundation. He worked with the developing industrial techniques in the lab of extrusion, the thermoplastic extrusion, and also processing cereals in the BRAPA agroindustrial. He's been studying doctorates with also grants by MBRAPA, instrumentation, husbandry together with nanobiotechnology. Currently, he is responsible for the direction of design, innovation, and new food products. And also he's proposing under new technologies, the sections. Is checking also, please, new technologies to detect adulterations in animal origin flowers. Please, a strong applause to him. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for the invitation. It is a pleasure to me to be here today, gathered together with you all. Let's cover a little bit about protein characterization, basically. I have a pleasure to represent a family company from Colombia, which is called Iluma. It's a holding. We like to define ourselves through an equation in this ecosystem. We understand the human factor as transformative of ideas and the driver allow us to materialize all of our mindset, which is as we see the world through the expertise, innovation, technology, allowing us to get to some propositions to find end users through the different companies that are part of the holding. Premix and Premixel basically is focused on animal nutrition, or that's better to align for the processing companies. Usually there's a oxidation in the food, that is why they perish, or microbiological action with the data they have and the products as a support to grant those companies this backup that we want to make sure that we have efficient resources. I have my colleagues here, Andres Meles Mesa, for any focus on this field of expertise. They can deep dive on that. So I'll be covering a little bit on that. Allura is a company on animal health. Geometrics has to do with internet hardware, focus on animal production. Notreo representing this moment, speaking about human nutrition, basically. Liba Bioworks, which is a company of biotechnology. Today, we are seeing that the future of nutrition get to a molecular level. That is to say, fermentation of precision is a sustainable mechanism to produce biomolecules that will be distinguishing productivity and the yield, which is a high-end technology available in Alianza. It's also important to mention that we ourselves at Traverse, in the transcendental way, have also the support, the backup of Lumen made the labs, which is in the RTP in North Carolina, which allow us to interact. Thank you. To allow us to interact around the world where there are more doctors in science and life, right? It's a pool of research that is quite interesting. Also under the principles that we are handling, we want also the teamwork and the synergy with the research centers and universities allow us to be the forefront of knowledge at the same time to back up each one of the projects that we are established with our allies. And the way that we measure our purpose is to nurture the well-being, is the number of days impacted a day, that is in the food centers at least. And the idea it is that for 2030, we impact 1 billion of lives daily with the business proposals that we channel up to each one of those companies that are part of our ecosystem. As I mentioned before, the fact that we are located in this research center allow us to interact with our researchers in different areas of expertise. For example, in the center, we see one measurement of the cognitive development with some of our offers, nutritional offers. We interact or make some in vitro testing. Products that go into space, which usually are the ones where the forefront of knowledge allow us to apply them also in the solution that we are rolling out. So now get into the subject that we can notice the importance of the efficiency around the world, and we see numbers like the following: Ano by 11,200,000, 11,200,000 of waste on a yearly basis. We get to lots of tons. A third of it is lost as a waste. That would be enough to end hunger around the world. That's why we in charge of using the efficient use of the resources, not to lose them. So let us remember that there's water, time, fertilizers, so on and so forth. There's an effect that we cause also not a whole number of activities that make us to think about how to use these resources. The greenhouse effect, so it is consolidated more and more as sustainable, right? Why? Because what we're doing 10 years before was a problem that was serious. Now we're turning that into an opportunity from a standpoint of nutrition to bring amino acids of high digestion and the sustainable development to those that has been for a decade in our countries. They were a subject that was quite sensitive. Now it's interesting that this proposal of value also takes with it a financial impact that is quite high. It is an estimation that this reference that the industry is generating around $290,000 million, which will be growing 3.5 on a yearly basis, bringing us to values around 420 billions for 2032. Also, by this resource, we have an opportunity to interact in those spaces, and settling down in those spaces, we have to have access to the cutting edge technology, allowing us to see the origins of these proteins, at the same time also to methods upon which we process this raw material to optimize it, right? Today, for example, we are speaking about molecular nutrition. We're getting to this level.
Everything makes us thinking with deep understanding of the resources this industry generates. The future is promising, and basically, well, understanding this relevance that it has in the world, that this industry has be that a long time. Well, it's important to be able to characterize it, to see where our plants are getting, understanding the challenges of logistics and the challenges created when the plants are not integrated, a market that is extremely dynamic, and we have different sources, different posers, and the prices or for advantages somehow can suffer adulteration. And sensorial pressure is always important because, like in any other industry, food industry, there are people who already have the senses more keen, and we need to characterize and see all these materials through a microscope, and that's a useful tool. But what will happen at the technology level? How are we going to enhance these levels of acceptance that the products have, or of characterization the products have, to be relevant in our proposals, prototypes or foods, right? Surely the techniques to mold the product are important, and we have to know how to characterize, because as I mentioned, at the microscope level, which is a technique to visualize all we can see at the naked eye, and this is the most traditional of the ways that allowed us that knowledge level, the plants have equipments that can differ sizes, shapes, micro element. You can see fat or protein very closely. So apart from that, when these systems can be vulnerable through human work or by demand, you need to deliver, and we need the use of new tools to optimize the time for these people and enhance the ability of knowing and following the diversity of copyright violations when we are looking deeply into the raw materials. And apart from microscope as a quick technique that allows us to have relatively efficient access to be able to detect this kind of fraud, we have the indirect methods also, like Keldal, Dumas, Biret, spectral microscope that calculate the nitrogen in the organic sources that allows us to detect the amount of protein contained in the solutions. For example, in the case of Kel, there are three important steps: digestion, distillation, and titulation. And Dumas, which is known as a method of combustion that basically is parallel to Keldal, where we, through equations and constants, we do the calculation of the protein. Gaburet and spectrometrics are focused on other sources of protein, but in the end, why talking about this? Because they are techniques that are complementary and that can help us understand a little bit the fraud that can be associated to an undesirable mixture in the proteins. Inclusively, if through the morphology, the features of the materials, we are able to see through some source with the use of specific solvents, we can isolate specific proteins, and that complementarily sheds light of where the adulterations can be. When we want to specialize ourselves a little more, we go through chromatographic methods, mainly HPLC, which gives us full characterization of amino acids, and the amino acids are basically the core structure of a specific protein, providing its identity and its specific features. But today, I want to talk a little more about NIRS and the techniques, not from the quantitative point of view, but in the other hand, under the qualitative point of view, to understand we have an absorption and wavelength that goes to 750 to 2,500 by amino acid by specific formula that gives us the trace of activity of the protein. And to do a characterization of each amino acid, the curve under NIRS is what really gives us the preciseness we need with the method. When amino acid shows up that doesn't correspond to the source we're looking for, we can also raise red flags, and to be very assertive and be able to use these equipments in a qualitative and not quantitative way. What we use are technologies parallel to NIRS, like chemometrics, that through regressions and algorithms, we can identify the standard of amino acids that are not commonly present in these sources to detect fraud. So unfortunately, the food industry is vulnerable always to these adulterations, because the dynamism with which the industry moves takes people who know these methodologies to be able to vulnerate them to. If we having the intention of being able to detect the changes and frauds, well, we use these technologies of statistics, chemometrics, the hyperspectral images to quickly, without the use of chemicals, in a sustainable manner, detect the fraud and raise a hand and tell our quality department, look, there's an alert. This doesn't correspond to what we are buying. And obviously, to detect what a posteriori will cause an inexactitude or unprecise feature of the attitude we want to execute. One of the most common problems, we can see changes in the origin of the raw materials we want, changes in the variety, changes in the methods or processes of extraction and purification of them, adulterations, replacements, and tergiversation. And obviously, with bad management of processes, we can detect raw materials that suffered a excess of temperature, a denaturalization of the protein excessively, a denaturalization which will go on, will bring harm to the product's quality. A simpler way to explain how it works, how NIRS works, it's the color. When we observe something, we're seeing wavelength from 400 to 700 nanometers, which are the three elements that we need to do a measurement of the color: the light source, the observer, and the object. So all we see are in this range of longitude. So for example, if we are seeing a white background here in this panel, probably what we see is the diffuse reflection of these 400 to 700 nanometers that reflect where we are watching. And the black, on the other hand, is absorbing all the wavelength, so we don't see anything reflected. That's why they tell us, don't become black under the sun, because we absorb all the wavelength. So the same way, or same wise, how the visible light works, the NIRS is able to cause an absorption in the specific amino acids of the source we want to analyze. This is these are very good news, because it allows us to detect specifically the proteic source, the origin in this case. So how do we use this technology to be able to use it and take solutions that allow us to detect fraud? We use chemometry. Basically, chemometry is a statistic method under which we identify these specters we see in NIRS. We do an specific evaluation of those that don't vary much. And through statistic methods, we separate the wavelength that vary, and we stick to the ones that don't vary much to be more sensible, because of the diversity of wavelength that can absorb the equipment. So we establish the algorithms that allow us to detect the fraud without the need of a curve like we normally use with this kind of equipment. So I wanted to talk about a success case. Fernando Vertero, collaborators from HAM, we worked in a project where we use hyperspectral images with trials alterated by ourselves, use those algorithms and see if we could quickly, without the use of inputs, detect the frauds, and we had success. Very successful in the trial. So this is a optimal chemical map, which is a very sensible visual form that you can use to see the relevance. The algorithm has to detect fraud. You see above the real value, and below in italic, the value the algorithm detects regarding the fraud. We detected that wavelength that are larger. For example, in this case, it's changes in blood meal with feathers. So the stronger ones in red and the weaker ones in blue, the parameters using the algorithm can detect the percentage of fraud, and this alerts our quality departments so we can go to the source of it. What happens if at some point a source that we don't know goes through this by this protocol? We'll see there is something that doesn't correspond to the original source, that surely the parallel analysis will bringing the agenda of the origin to create a specific algorithm for this specific source. So these results are pretty promising. And as a conclusion, we can say they are trustworthy, desirable methods. They are non-invasive. They don't need any chemicals. They are sustainable, and they are very useful for the detection of alterations, of adulteration. With these technologies, the suspicious perpetrators can be quickly detected. And these are equipments that can go from $2,000 to $90,000. And so you can put them into the online processes. Others can be used in labs. So there are many ways. And with all these equipments, it's possible to perform these kinds of measurements. So I thank you very much for this space. We are open to dialogue to see alternatives of this application of these kinds of technologies. Thank you very much.